Welcome to another mini-sode of the Delaware Deep Dive, a podcast by the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Kelly Basil, and today I'm joined by Rob Reed, President of Aerospace and Defense Solutions at ILC Dover. Rob, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to talk to you.
Awesome. And I just want to start by saying thank you, Kelly. Really appreciate you and the Delaware Chamber hosting myself and wanting to hear a little bit more about ILC Dover here in Delaware.
I have to say, I'm a super fan of ILC Dover. We do a contest called the Coolest Things Made in Delaware, and ILC has been a top 4 finalist, I think both years, if not very close to that. We at the chamber, the staff don't get to select the winner. Of course, it's popular voting, but I do vote for you. So
We appreciate that, and we do love that competition.
yeah,
It's always fun to highlight our technologies and our products, and so to bring the competitive spirit and competitive edge into that is just really, really fun for us.
it is so fun. For our listeners who don't know you, why don't you just start off by sharing a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do at ILC?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Like Kelly said, I am the president of our Aerospace and Defense Solutions business with ILC Dover. I've been with ILC Dover now for 3 years. I did have a 20-year career in aerospace thus far, and so when the opportunity came up to lead such an iconic and historic company like ILC Dover, I really had to jump at it. ILC Dover, of course, is maybe most well known for our iconic product being the EVA spacesuit, the extravehicular spacesuit that we've done for NASA all the way back to the Apollo days. But we also have a wide variety of both aerospace and defense products that all revolve around soft goods, and taking those soft goods and applying them in the harshest and most life-critical and mission-critical environments.
Such interesting work, and if anyone ever gets to be able to tour the facility, it's really incredible, just the products that you create, the work that you do, and even the people that work for the company. So ILC Dover has quite deep roots in Delaware, as you sort of alluded to. Can you kind of share that history with us and how the company's evolved over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. So as our name suggests, we do have a strong heritage in and around Dover. So we have been part of the Dover area for over 70 years. So our current facility is in Frederica. But we have been at the cornerstone of Delaware's aerospace and defense industry, like I said, for more than 70 years. And so our spacesuits, as I already mentioned, have really enabled a lot of those historic achievements, from the Apollo moon landings all the way down to the International Space Station operations today. So we've conducted over 250 space flights, 6 moon landings, and over 3,000 hours of spacewalks aboard the International Space Station.
Wow.
And so now, as an Ingersoll Rand business, we have an even deeper future in this space. And so we're able to fully accelerate our innovation while preserving the technical rigor and mission-first culture that we've always had.
What's next for your company?
Yeah, so there's many different avenues that I would love to go down. Why don't we do this? Why don't we talk about defense a little bit, and then why don't we talk about space a little bit?
Love that.
And so in the defense world, obviously, we all see it every day. There's just a tremendous amount of global instability. And while that's very difficult for us to see and watch as humans, it does provide a great amount of opportunities for insertion of our technologies. So one that, again, another one of our iconic products is we've done the Goodyear blimp for many, many decades now. So that's similar technology that a lot of people can visualize in that Goodyear blimp, at sporting events and whatnot. We also apply that in the defense world. So we have a product that's called a tethered aerostat, and that aerostat goes above a contested area, and it provides continuous surveillance and monitoring with a sensor package in that. And so we provide the soft goods that protect it. It provides, it's oftentimes in a maritime environment where there's salt water, there's hurricane force winds, there's UV constant exposure, so on and so forth. And so we provide that package, that soft goods package that protects that sensor and radar package. And so with a lot of the things that you're hearing today about protecting the U.S. border or doing missile defense applications, whether it's in Ukraine or any of these other contested areas, there's a really strong need for our technologies there.
this I hope isn't a dumb question, but the work that you do, is it primarily for the government, or do you do any sort of private contracts?
Yeah, it's a mix of both.
Okay.
And especially in our space business, you know, NASA has always been and will always be a very, very important customer of ours. But you might be hearing more and more in the news about the commercial space or the next generation space race, you know, to get back to the moon and to go to Mars. NASA is going to play a critical role in that, like they always have. There is a much greater prevalence of commercial space companies. You know, you hear about SpaceX a lot, but there's many, many others like Sierra Space, Blue Origin, so on and so forth.
Okay.
And so we have a lot of emerging partnerships with those companies. And also ILC Dover has changed our business model to support both of those environments. So like one of the things that we've done over the last several years is we've made research and development investments internally in what we call our Astro EVA spacesuit. And so whereas historically, you know, NASA or another government entity would have come and said, hey, we would like you to be on contract and we'd like to pay you to design that, we get out in front of that.
Okay.
And so that we have that baseline design that we can then quickly apply to several commercial space companies, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Thank you. That's helpful context. I imagine some of the work you do has to stay private. I'm sure some of it's quite sensitive, but to the extent that you're able to share, can you kind of talk about some of your current missions?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the opportunity. One of the ones that I want to highlight that's really, really exciting is our work in inflatable habitats.
Okay.
So if you're familiar with the International Space Station, it's been flying and manned now for 25 full years, and so that is primarily built of metallic structures. So it's called like a hard-walled metallic structure, right? Sometimes called like a tin can, but that's how our astronauts live and work and do research and other activities in low Earth orbit today. And that International Space Station was built over many years and over many, many shuttle flights. So it took a lot of fuel to get up there. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of investment, et cetera, et cetera.
I can only imagine.
And so now, you know, as the International Space Station is reaching its the end of its operational life, we're looking as a civilization to get multiple international space stations, multiple commercial low Earth orbit destinations in orbit. And so that's going to take a lot of launches. It's going to take a lot of all the things I described. And so one technology that ILC Dover can add to that is inflatable habitats. And so it's just what it sounds like. So it gets launched in a normal, 5-meter or 7-meter rocket fairing, whatever the future holds, and it gets launched in a deflated state, right? And then when it goes up into orbit, it gets inflated and it can grow to 3 times its launch size.
That is so interesting.
And so in just a single launch, we can attain a third of the volume of the International Space Station today in a very, very much more efficient way.
Huh. Wow. That is incredible. I don't know. You all are so brilliant to be able to come up with these solutions. So let's actually talk about that. Your workforce. So as an employer, and you mentioned you're evolving to meet the needs of today and tomorrow. What skills and mindsets do you look for in your workforce?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So let's first start with some of the baseline stuff, right? The technical skills. Those are entrance criteria. So we have a lot of really, really talented folks with unique knowledge of advanced sewing techniques, soft goods, textile engineering, RF heat sealing, as well as design engineering and manufacturing precision. So soft goods are a little bit unique in that it's just as much of an art as it is a science. So you have all those great engineering-centric mindsets to them, but then you also have a little bit of additional know-how that you only can gain with hands-on experience. So there's those technical ones, but then there's also the behaviors that better align with our values. Things like having a bias for action, integrity, and an ownership mindset, and it all revolves around. We always have to be successful. We have zero margin for error. One of the things we like to talk about the most in all those spacewalks that I mentioned earlier, it's all with zero failures, because that's the most important thing to us, is protecting those assets and protecting those people as they operate in those very, very harsh environments.
I had the opportunity to tour ILC Dover several years ago, and one of the things that stuck out to me was one of the hardest positions you all have, and I don't know if this is still true, have a hard time filling though, are sewers.
Yes.
And it's almost like that's a forgotten skill. Because you think about all that advanced manufacturing and engineering, as you pointed out, but there's such a wide range of people that are needed in order to accomplish what you're doing. And I don't know why that really struck me. But then at your 50th anniversary event, I met one of the sewers who was on the Apollo mission, and that was just so cool. And the pride that she had in her work was just, I mean, it just transcended her. And I imagine that's a lot of what your workforce feels still today.
Oh, it's amazing. It's tremendous. So one of my favorite things to do is go down to the production floor and, talk with the sewers, see what they're working on. Try not to distract them because they're doing very, very detailed,
zero margin for error.
detailed work. But it's amazing. So there's one of our sewers in particular, I'll mention, and so this individual, as she's our most complex piece of hardware that we work on is the gloves, right? So I once heard an astronaut say, it has to protect you from the vacuum of space, but you also have to be able to tie a knot with surgical string. Like it's one of the most intricate things that I've seen in my career that we add to the space industry. But so this individual just is a wonderful person. Each time she is sewing a pair of gloves, she knows exactly which astronaut those gloves are for, and she puts a picture of that astronaut up at her workstation just to remind her every day as she comes in, as she goes to lunch, exactly why she's doing what she's doing and why it's so important.
That's a really cool story. Thank you for sharing that. Along the same lines of people you employ and work with, I imagine, since you're just down the road from Dover Air Force Base, but what's your relationship with the base, or even just supporting the veteran and military community in general?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple things here. So there's as I mentioned earlier, we're now in Ingersoll Rand business, which provides lots of wonderful opportunities. One of those is that Ingersoll Rand recently did sign on to be part of the U.S. Army's Partnership for Your Success program, which helps those veterans find a good transition into the civil career world. And so it's great to have that because that's something that we were perhaps doing on our own independently, but to have that broader program and that broader set of enablers there is really helpful. The other thing that I want to mention from a veteran standpoint is just that mission mindset. So as I hope is coming through on this podcast, we're super, super passionate about our mission, which is enabling human spaceflight. And we find that as we look for some of the values that I mentioned, one of the places that we find that extremely, extremely readily is in our veteran community. Right? They have spent their careers to date in that mission-centric mindset where the mission comes first, and a passion and a dedication and a drive to achieve that mission. And we find that aligns extremely well with all the challenging things that we're trying to do and really fits in with the spirit of ILC Dover.
We hear that so often from a lot of our employer members, that engaging military and veteran community as employees, they're some of their best employees. So thank you for your work in that. Last question for you. Let's talk about the community around you. So what does being a good neighbor mean to ILC Dover?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I mentioned, we've had a very, very long history, so much so that we put Dover in our namesake. But I mean, being a good neighbor, for us, it starts with how do we show up for our people and for our community. So being part of Frederica for more than 70 years, it's very personal to us. So you'll see our employees, volunteering, supporting local schools, and partnering with organizations like the one I wanted to mention today, which is the Delaware Breast Cancer Coalition. So we've proudly supported their activities just recently in October with a donation drive. So it's really about taking care of your community, and this is one organization where we feel like our mission aligns really well with theirs, and we're very proud to support.
Thank you. Before I let you go, if someone which I think everyone will find this episode incredibly interesting, wants to get in touch with you or anyone at ILC, how can they get in touch?
Yeah. So probably the easiest way for the community to touch base with me is via LinkedIn, right?
LinkedIn.
So there's, it's easy to find me. It's much easier than giving you a URL or a long email address. But yeah, LinkedIn is a great tool to find myself and other leaders at ILC Dover.
Wonderful. Rob, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming in and just sharing about yourself and ILC Dover. And I look forward to working with you more.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for the great work that the Chamber's doing here in Delaware.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Delaware Deep Dive, brought to you by the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce. Before we sign off, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen. I know podcast hosts say this all the time, but your support is invaluable, and it helps other listeners easily find us. I'm your host, Kelly Basil. We'll see you soon.